very harsh punishment to these people.
Donald Trump saying it's time for America to get a lot tougher with dealing with radical Islamic terrorists. Judge Jeanine Pirro, Jay Sekulow weigh in on that and much more tonight on this busy news night here on Hannity.
He said Social Security.
And this is a Fox News alert. I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. A tense scene in Charlotte, North Carolina, where a crowd is protesting the police shooting Tuesday afternoon of a black man. You're looking at some live pictures right there on the left-hand side of your screen. The protesters have been going after police cars and throwing bottles and rocks at police officers. Police, in turn, have fired tear gas at the protesters. The commotion injuring about a dozen officers. One of them was hit in the face by a rock, we're told. There are no reports yet on just how many protesters have been arrested. Police say the man who was shot was armed. However, his family denies that claim, saying he was just reading a book while waiting for his son. The officer who pulled the trigger has been put on administrative leave for the time being. The crowd protesting the shooting grew very quickly following that shooting. It started with about 40 folks, but local media now say there are hundreds of people. Of course, stay with Fox News Channel for more on this developing story. I'm Jackie Ibanez. Now back to Hannity.
All right, welcome back to Hannity. And during his speech to the UN General Assembly earlier today, President Obama gave himself a big pat on the back and said, "The world is safer than ever before." Really? Well, that's not all. He also said that countries would be even more secure if they accommodated more refugees. Watch this.
We've taken away terrorist safe havens, strengthened the non-proliferation regime, resolved the Iranian nuclear issue through diplomacy. A quarter century after the end of the Cold War, the world is by many measures less violent and more prosperous than ever before to help refugees who are desperate for a home. We should all understand that ultimately our world will be more secure if we are prepared to help those in need and the nations who are carrying the largest burden with respect to accommodating these refugees.
All right, we continue with the editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham, as well as former presidential candidate, Fox News contributor Herman Cain. You know, Laura, what's interesting about this is front and center now, because big choices on this issue. Do we want a president that will say the words radical Islam? Trump will say it, Hillary won't. Do we want a president that will vet refugees from countries that have values that directly conflict with our constitutional values? Hillary wants a 550% increase. He wants extreme vetting. Huge difference. Also, Hillary says we need to not build walls but bridges. Trump wants to defend our borders. Hillary wants open borders. So big differences and distinctions here just on this one little issue.
Well, it's a big issue. It's a big issue, Sean. And we now know, of course, France is building a wall to stop the spillover of refugees that might be making their way into the UK. That was reported. We know that only 36% of Americans, according to that big poll that was done in August, support allowing these refugees to enter the United States. So once again, Obama is thwarting the will of the American people in an attempt to live up to the ideals of the global community. And I think the speech at the UN today was really bizarre. I mean, it's completely out of touch with what's happening in Western Europe, with the rise of the populist movements, and completely out of touch with the sentiment of the American people. I think that crosses party lines on endangering American lives by allowing people who are vetted by the UN. When even our CIA director, Sean, a few months ago, John Brennan, said the refugee population will be used by ISIS to bring terrorists into Western Europe and, of course, then into the United States. He said that before Congress.
By the way, not just him. Our FBI director, our assistant FBI director, our House Homeland Security Committee chair, Mike McCall, our former special envoy to defeat ISIS.
But Obama doesn't care. He does not care.
And Herman, they're willing to gamble with the lives of the American people and ignore our top intelligence officials. That, to me, is unacceptable. Now, we can have sympathy for people that are victims of a civil war, like in Syria, but what about a safe zone that Trump supports, where you provide food and safety and medicine and baby formula and cots and blankets and supplies, and then they can move back into their own country eventually? Why not that? Why is that not compassionate?
That is compassionate. The people of this country, they do care about helping those in need. Look, the comments made by President Obama simply say this. He thinks he's the president of the world, when in fact he is he is a failed president of the United States of America. We care about helping people, but we're not going to be suckers. You know these bridges that he talks about building, and Hillary talk about building these bridges? The problem with those bridges is that they all come in one way, over here to hurt us, to kill us, and take advantage of the generosity and the compassion that the people in this country has.
Let me play Obama. He came in apologizing for America, and he walks out apologizing for America. Boy, the radical, true to form, never grew in office, the same leftist he was coming in, the same guy going out. Watch this.
Yes, in America, there is too much money in politics, too much entrenched partisanship, too little participation by citizens, in part because of a patchwork of laws that makes it harder to vote. The United States worked with many nations to curb the excesses of capitalism. We've made our share of mistakes over these last 25 years. And I've acknowledged some. We can only realize the promise of this institution's founding to replace the ravages of war with cooperation if powerful nations, like my own, accept constraints. Surely we can rally our nations to solidarity while recognizing equal treatment for all communities, whether it's a religious minority in Myanmar or an ethnic minority in Burundi or a racial minority right here in the United States.
The only thing missing, Laura, were the terrible deeds done in the name of Christ.
Yeah, really, he pushed the issue of the Prophet Muhammad cartoon today, bringing that up. I mean, he speaks very rarely about what's happened to the Christians in the Middle East. He'll speak very generally.
There's genocide. We're doing nothing.
Yeah,
genocide.
The Christian population is suffering so greatly. They've been displaced from their ancestral homeland.
And we're not taking them in.
We took in 52 out of 11,000. That's 99-point-something% Muslim. So none of this surprises me. But you're right, Sean. You hit on the important point. Despite his track record of failure, Obama took a victory lap today at the UN, completely disassociated from reality, and having learned apparently zero in 8 years in office. He has learned nothing about this country, nothing about what concerns us, and apparently his view of the world is things are safer and more prosperous than when he came into office.
It is
maybe
pathological.
For China,
it's like a cognitive dissonance with this guy, Herman.
Yes, look, President Obama doesn't understand two things that other countries respect us for. Donald Trump understands these things, Hillary Clinton doesn't, and Obama doesn't. Two things: our economic strength and our military strength. That's what they respect. All of this feel-good stuff does not matter to the rest of the world. This is where President Obama and Hillary Clinton get off track. And all Donald Trump is saying is, let's get back on track. Let's have our economy growing as fast as it can grow, and let's rebuild our military. That's what the rest of the world will respect, and that's what the rest of the world will respond to when we try to increase the strength of the community.
Predictions. Who's going to win the election in 49 days? Herman Cain.
Donald Trump.
Laura Ingraham.
Trump, and he's going to win states that Republicans haven't won in decades.
I hope you're both right. All right. Thank you both. Coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.